population of a species will always live in a wider community. A community is the interdependence of many species on each other. So populations of different species live together and form a community. These species rely on each other for things such as food and shelter. A term often used to describe a community is stable. A stable community is one in which the number of species within the community stays relatively constant, but also the population sizes too. Stable communities form when the environment they are in only changes slightly. In a community, we say that organisms are interdependent. This is true as some animals will eat plants while others will eat other animals. Animals may use some plants or trees to find shelter, such as insects living in trees, and sometimes animals will pollinate plants. If, for instance, the plants in a community die out or are removed, the whole community would be affected. Every organism in a community is dependent on each other. When this community then interacts with the abiotic elements of the environment, it is known as an ecosystem. Abiotic means non-living. Organisms require materials from the environment, such as carbon, in order to survive, as well as materials from the biotic, living parts. In other words, the other individuals in a community. A community of organisms is constantly in competition. In any habitat, there will only be a limited amount of resources available. As you would expect, the most suited and well-adapted organisms will outcompete the other, less well-adapted organisms. In animals, most of the competition is between the same species for food, territory, and mates. Herbivores will compete for plants. If an organism eats a varied diet, they will often survive longer than a herbivore which only eats one or two types of plants. Carnivores undergo a similar competition for prey. Carnivores often have to have more adaptations as they have to be able to catch their prey, and so whichever organism is the most effective at catching the prey will be the ones that survive. The prey will also have adaptations in order to survive. Some prey animals will have poisons, be camouflaged, or mimic danger colours to avoid being eaten. So even prey animals are competing with each other. Territory is often competed for, as some animals may nest in certain areas, or it could be a place that has the best food source. Competition for mates is also so that an organism is able to reproduce and have offspring. Some males will compete by fighting, while others may compete by showing off. Some birds may dance to try and attract a female. Plants also compete with each other, even though you might not expect it. Plants compete for water, light, space, and nutrients. Plants compete for these factors in order to survive. Without water or sunlight, plants won't be able to photosynthesize. Nutrients are needed for reactions in the plant, and space is needed in order to obtain these factors. Some plants will be adapted in order to survive. For instance, plants in a woodland setting may flower earlier in the year. This is because the branches of the trees will block out lots of sunlight when it comes to summer, and so plants around the trees will need to adapt in this way to survive. Plants can also adapt and have longer roots in order to avoid competition with the roots of other plants. In order to avoid competition with its own seedlings, a plant will have an effective way of spreading seeds. There are many different factors which could affect a community, both biotic and abiotic factors. In order to survive, organisms must adapt to suit or overcome these conditions. Biotic factors include food availability, what happens if there is a food shortage, competition between species, which is known as interspecific competition, what happens if a new organism is able to outcompete another species. The arrival of new predators or diseases could wipe out a population. Abiotic factors include light intensity. This limits photosynthesis, and so if plants are going to grow in the shade, they need to have adaptations. Temperature, again, limits photosynthesis, and if temperature is too cold, plants won't grow very big. This means the amount of herbivores in an area would reduce. In water communities, the oxygen levels could vary, and this could impact them hugely if they drop too low. Carbon dioxide is a limiting factor of photosynthesis. Moisture levels are also important, as communities won't tend to thrive if there is little water in the air. Organisms have to be adapted to live in extremely dry areas. Soil pH and mineral content is again important for plants. Plants will tend to be in areas with good levels of mineral content unless it is specifically adapted to get nitrates from capturing and digesting animal proteins. pH is important, as a low pH inhibits decay. No decay means no mineral ions being replaced back into the soil.